All right. Let's see if we have any mainline people. The Lord be with you.
Right here.
There it is. Yeah. Cool. Awesome. Well, hey, good to see you guys. Sorry I'm late. Jamie was on time, which checks out, and I was very late. So here we are. Awesome. Well, hey, we will, you know what? We were going to introduce ourselves later, Jamie.
Yeah.
But that feels weird.
It does. Let's do it now.
Yeah? Okay,
Yeah.
Cool. All right. Go ahead.
Okay. Hey, my name is Jamie, and I'm the executive director and the founder of Satellite Gaming. I don't often like to say that because I like to slide under the radar. It's nice living under my rock. Not on social media, not like on LinkedIn and stuff. So if you want to talk to me, just ask me for my number. We can do this thing called texting. It's really great. And I absolutely love this topic, the topic of fundraising, friend raising, partner raising, whatever you call it. For me, what this comes down to is there's us, there's the ministry workers, the laborers, the ones in the field of video game ministry. And then there's people that do other stuff and they work really hard at that. And we get to tell them like, hey, you know how you work really hard and that produces like this thing called money? The work that I do does not produce that. But guess what? What if I told you you can keep doing what you love to do, keep making more money, and that will enable me to continue to do what I do, and together we can win souls for Jesus Christ through video games. And they go, I can just keep doing what I do and you do what you do? Yes. Okay, great, let's do that. So for me, it's really just about making friends. It's about identifying people that the Lord has called to give and me making that opportunity known. The Lord has allowed me to do this full time for about 7 years now. I've been doing ministry since I was 18. I'm 37. I absolutely love it. This was my first time fundraising when I got this job, and we'll get into a little bit more of why I'm standing here in front of you. It's not just because I enjoy this topic. It's because the Lord has given me opportunity to jump into this pretty knees deep, and it's a lot of what I do. There are people outside of this room and probably even in this room that could probably teach way more than about the topic of fundraising than me. One of them's standing right here. But I think where it checks out for this room is I've done it specifically with the context of video game nerd culture ministry. And there's not a lot of people that have found a way to do that. And I don't think that I've found that way because I'm clever. I just think it's calling from the Lord and maybe a little bit of cleverness. And I hope to share that cleverness with you. And I think the Lord's going to do some really cool things.
Yeah, that's great. Thanks, Jamie. Yeah, I'm Jon Crawford. I live in Indianapolis, Indiana. I have raised a lot of support throughout the years as a church planter. And one of the things that I did specifically was raise to plant a very kind of micro church community in my neighborhood, for my neighborhood. And I knew that was really different. This was like back in the like mid 2010s where everybody was like, go plant in a big suburb and make a lot of money. And it was like, well, what about like in a neighborhood with people that don't like Jesus? And it's like, yeah, cool. So I had to raise support to do that, did a lot of that. And then there's a couple really long stories short, but we just keep doing that. I still live in the neighborhood and I still do that. And but I now work with an organization called Reliant, who I had raised my support through. And part of what I get to do is go and meet new folks that we get to partner with. But a big part of what I've done over the years is train folks. And so I built our training that we currently have today that's helped train just over 1,000 folks over the last few years on how to raise their support, raised $200 million. And all of that just to say, like, those are like fun numbers. But for me, what it represents is like individuals like yourself who are now doing the thing that God has given them to do, to love people in the space that they're at, in these like unique spaces like I did in my neighborhood, like they can do in the places all over the world. And so I feel really, really grateful to do that. I feel really passionate about this idea of the people of God being the people of God and sharing the resources together to see the things that God is on about go. And the things that God is on about, as you guys know, is loving the people in front of you and loving folks, loving nerds, being present in micro places in order to love it. And then some of you are also streaming and doing all these sorts of things. And for me, I'm also a nerd. You know, that's the kind of stuff I do professionally. I'm also a nerd. When my kids on Sabbath, we take a Sabbath every week. And a lot of times my kids go down for rest time and I take that 2 hours to go to about a block and a half from me is a local TTRPG store primarily. And I go and I get a rule book and I just read. rule books of different kind of TTRPGs because I love it and I think it's fun and I'm a big nerd. Lately, I've been really enjoying the Stormlight RPG. Came out and it's like combining all this like really great Brandon Sanderson lore for me and a whole new game mechanic and system, and I think that's super fun. And I read it. I haven't gotten to play in like 2 years because kids and work and things, but I read them still. So anyways, that's who I am. It's what I get to do and what I'm really passionate about. And we met at the last NCMS here.
Is it in this room?
It might have been this room, and then we left this room and went and had coffee for like hours.
Yes.
And we're just like, yeah, here's this co-passion that we have. And we've kept in touch over the years around this idea of, hey, how do we help the theme of Onward this year, right? Being so passionate about helping people in this room, the ministry that you're doing, be sustainable and be possible for you. And this has been a shared passion that we've had, and so we're like, hey, let's just do a breakout. They were like, Jamie, do you want to do a breakout? John, do you want to do a breakout? We're like, sure, but can we do it together? Yeah. So here we are. This is, that's where we're at. So we're going to talk a lot about those things. Let me give you the overview really quick of what we're going to be doing. The goal is that you have a model, a way to share the vision in a way that is compelling, concrete, and accessible. One of the main ideas that Jamie's going to kick us off with here pretty shortly is the idea of being able to show vision. Not just talk about it, but how do you show vision? How do you show the work that God is doing as a way to invite people in and what that looks like? We're going to talk about some of those frameworks and how you can do that. And then before lunch, hopefully, you're going to have some time to begin building that for you, to kind of take some of these basic building blocks and to build a 5-minute vision cast for what that looks like. We'll take some break for lunch. We'll come back, exercise that building. You'll get to share with somebody at your table. And then at the very end, we're going to ask for a few volunteers, and I will be happy to call on you if nobody volunteers, to come up and share with the room. And then we'll be able to kind of give some feedback because of one of the best ways we can learn is kind of learning together. So does that seem good? Awesome. All right, I'm a big context person, so it really is helpful to me to know who's in the room and what's going on. And so if you and I don't know each other, I have had some conversations with some of you, and I know some of your ministry context, and I'll D&D ministry, building D&D ministry, and what that looks like, and various things, church planting, all these sorts of ways. I would love to hear what it is that you do in 10 seconds. So I'll call on anybody. You look really ready. Yeah. I'd love to hear. Where are you from and what do you get to do? What brings you here?
I live in Nashville, and my ministry is primarily focused on using the arts to share the gospel. And so some of what I do is through like cosplay ministry and stuff like that.
Dope.
Yeah.
Cool.
That's awesome. And I forgot to say, what was your name too?
Tiffany.
Tiffany. Awesome.
Cool.
Thanks, Tiffany. That's great. Cool. Arts, cosplay ministry, what this looks like, and invite people into that. Who else?
I'm Steve from Portland with Save Points. We help isolated nerds find nerd-friendly churches in their area to plug into a real-world physical community.
Love that. Yeah. So for those joining us in future, this isn't live streamed, right?
No.
It's future
Camera
folks.
that's just recording.
Hey, future folks. Steve talked about being in Portland and connecting nerds into local church and what that looks like and how they do that. It's great. Let's one more. Or two more if there's somebody burning. Yep.
I write books that help people learn about Jesus and engage with Scripture through the stories from nerdom that they already know. And I go to Comic-Cons and give them a chance to get those books, and sometimes I do panels or church services at cons.
Cool.
Yeah. Love that. So going to cons and telling the story of the gospel through nerddoms that they already know and writing those books and those materials. Love that. And what is your name?
Eric Anderson.
Eric Anderson. Nice to meet you. Staves.
I'm starting a Minecraft YouTube channel and transitioning into doing game store chaplaincy.
Okay. Love that. Love my little game story. You guys, I don't know if you saw the goodie bags and I just bought a bunch of booster packs. Really, that was just my excuse to live out my dream of going into my local game stores and going like, can I have a box, please? Can't do that on my own. But I can with my credit card from work, so it's great. It was pretty dope. So yeah, I love game store ministry and being present.
My credit card doesn't work like that.
It's good. Awesome. All right, any other, maybe, like your ministry is like a little different from what's been said, or no, go ahead anyways. Okay.
I'm lead pastor at Fireside Church. We're a church for nerds.
Cool.
Andy nights, hooked up local game stores.
Yep.
do Warhammer next time.
Is it digital or is it in person? Cool.
We're doing both.
Cool. Love that. And we're at Arizona.
Phoenix, Arizona. Peoria, Arizona, but Phoenix.
Okay, cool. Love that. Warhammer is one of the things I've been talking about magic, and Warhammer, some of the things that I would love so much, but I know myself and I cannot. I would just go too deep, too quick, it would be bad. So that's sweet. Awesome. Awesome. All right, well, let's kick off then. There's a few things that we're going to kind of talk about a little bit when we talk about fundraising that I think are just helpful to start at the beginning about. I have some like kind of fundraising is and is nots, and then Jamie's going to kick off with that idea of vision and some imageries and things for vision. So with that, one of the first ones that I want to share is the idea that fundraising is not a bridge to cross. It's not a thing you have to get through in order to do the other thing, right? Fundraising is a biblical way of being the people of God together. I have all sorts of notes about Paul's letters are actually just fundraising letters with a little bit of stop doing that dumb thing mixed in, right? It's more than that, right? He's admonishing the church, he's writing and saying, hey, here's this thing that God is doing, here's what, but would you give? Would you be a part of that? Why? Because the people of God share their resources for the mission. This is why really early on, people are giving to the Levites so that they can support the work of what they're doing together in a way. This is why people gave to Jesus' ministry. The women supported Jesus' ministry because the way the people of God coming together to share resources for the things that God is on about is a thing that we've seen over and over and over and over and over again throughout Scripture, right? And it is a way of engaging it together. I mentioned 3 John earlier. This is 1 John. It's good that we give so that we can be a part of the things that God is doing. That's what you're inviting people into, and it is ministry. Jamie and I will try not to get sidetracked on too many side rails, but one of them is like almost every fundraising appointment just turns into like a ministry appointment at the same time. You just end up loving and saying, hey, how are you? Can I pray for you? Can I do some of these things? It is ministry. It's not an unfortunate thing you just have to get through in order to get to ministry. So that's one of the first things that I want to offer you and give to you. The quicker you can hold that in your heart and look at the people of God being the people of God together, the easier this gets. It's not easy, but the easier it gets.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. The other thing is fundraising is not magic money. It really is partnership. And don't underestimate that idea of this really being a partnership. I try not to use language like, hey, will you give to me so I can, or give to us so we can. It's, hey, do you want to go this way with us? Here's what we need. It's really letting them know, like, we're going together. I might get my boots a little dirty, and it's going to take you writing a check, right? But we're going the same direction. We're doing the same thing. It's not give to me so I can. So I like to say that fundraising is like 90% friendship, 9% strategy, tact, maybe that cleverness that I mentioned earlier, and it's 1% asking for money. 1%. A little short story here is when I very first became full-time, it was because my wife got pregnant and I was getting a salary at the church that started satellite gaming. And I remember very clearly going to my pastor saying, like, I've never asked for a raise. I've never complained about money. Been working there for 5 years. I just said, Tom, I need to make more money. Jessica's pregnant. He's like, I agree. You need to make more money. It's time you do satellite gaming full time. I was like, I said I need more money. Satellite gaming has no money. And he's like, I think you can do it, man. You know how to paint vision. Money follows vision. He's like, I think you can do this. So we came up with this 19-month plan, okay, or 18-month plan. So 9 weeks of pregnancy, I would raise half of a monthly salary. So I'd raise 6 months of my salary while my wife was pregnant. Then I'd take a 3-month paternity leave. I'd come back from paternity leave, working half-time for the church, half-time for satellite gaming, and then I'd raise the other 6 months of salary while working half-time for satellite gaming. So it's this foolproof 18-month plan. And most people tell me, like, didn't work, did it? I'm like, no, it didn't, because I was full-time in 3 months. And I got to start full-time 6 months before my daughter came. So people are like, oh, how long did you fundraise? I fundraised for 3 months. No. I fundraised for 5 years and 3 months because I was building relationship. I was building trust. I was demonstrating and showing people the vision of satellite gaming. I asked for money for 3 months, but I fundraised for 5 years and 3 months. You understand? So there's this idea of saying just 1% asking for money.
Okay. Last idea I want to give you, because again, I asked, like, who loves raising money? And like one whoop, and I don't know if any of them ended up in here. Jamie, like, because guys, Jamie's being
weird,
bashful, but he's really, really good at this. So anyways, that's the whole thing. Here's what fundraising is not. It is not begging for money,
Amen.
right? Sometimes when we go in to have that conversation, it's really tempting to go like, hi, it'd be really nice if you could, please, sir, please, right? It's not begging for money, y'all. It is inviting people to be a part of what God is doing. That is what you are doing. So it's coming back, you're building partnerships, you're inviting people. Again, I'm not telling you that it's not going to have hard days. It's not going to be moments that call. There's this scene in Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs where he goes to call April for a date. I don't know if you're familiar with that scene. If you remember this scene, he goes to call her and he's like amping himself up and has all this science experiment about like making the phone call because he's so nervous about it. He's like, da, 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 and he calls and she answers. He's just like, and then he hangs up and then like reamps himself up. And then again, like there will be days that phone call, that meeting, that giving and ask, do it because there's this messages of like, hey, we're coming to beg for money. Why can't
Can I say this too?
Yeah.
It still happens to me sometimes where there's moments where I'm like, shoot, yeah. Like we were in a meeting just yesterday and I didn't know that it was somebody that had a lot of money and wanted to see what we do happen. My father-in-law said, I have a friend in Colorado, go meet him. And I'm like, great. He was the executive fundraiser for Young Life. And now he wants to see my case for support. I'm like, bro, I've got my journal in my backpack. That's it. He's like, he literally said, shame on you. And I was like, I'm ready to learn from this guy. This is sweet. That was a deer in the headlights. That's probably the most you've ever seen me a deer in the headlights. Yeah, it was wild. So
Yeah, it's great. So it's not begging for money. Sorry?
So what did you do?
I looked him dead in the eyes and I said, I want to learn everything from you that I possibly can. And here's our local need here in Colorado Springs. What do I do next? And we've already had 3 emails since then. Yeah. So.
What's a case for support?
It is. Wow. Well, here we go.
Yeah.
Case for support is just hand me a short 5-page book or a 1-page document. Just here's what I'm doing. Here's problem, solution, impact, invitation. Just like boom, boom, boom. It's like a very quick pitch, right? And that's a term that's used a lot of time in like organizational fundraising. It could also be part of your individual mission. We'll get to some of that. We may not use the word case for support, but the latter half of this will unpack that big time.
Yeah. That fourfold thing that he just named is what we'll be working on today. Go ahead.
Problem, solution, impact, and invitation.
So we'll look at problem solution primarily today, and that's what you'll be kind of building.
Impact is really like the proof that it's working.
Yeah.
So
That's good.
You may not have that yet, and it's okay.
Awesome. All right, so he rattled that off. Why? Because he has his problem, solution, impact, and invitation. He's going to focus primarily on but what I wanted to see is, I'm just going to let Jamie talk about satellite for a few minutes and give that.
I can do that.
And then as a way to kind of imagine, as you're hearing some of the things he's talking about, look and notice what's the problems he's naming. How is he talking about what they're doing about it? How is he talking about the things God is doing? Because this is the work that you're going to be doing here shortly, building in. So Jamie's going to talk about that and then also just roll right into some of his framework stuff.
Cool.
And I'm going to sit down, but with the mic in my hand.
Yeah.
To be
and
your hype man.
riff. Yeah.
Great.
And if I'm going to go ahead and start here, I'm going to start with the scripture. Okay.
Yeah.
I think that'll just lay the foundation for this. So, if you have your Bibles, or if you have an app called the Bible app, let's go to John 1. And go ahead and actually, at your tables, read through John 1. We're going to go, let's see, I think it's real short. Just go 35 through 39. That's it, just 35 through 39. Somebody at your table, read out loud. It's John 1, 35 through 39. John 1, 35 through 39. Oh, whoa, hey, what's up?
So,
And it might be worth having Cole chime in at some point, just because he's raising through Reliant for Satellite Gaming.
Yeah.
Good example.
So you feel good? I mean, you're just...
Yeah. I'm just going to go through...
Hey, internet people, you can hear us.
Yeah. 39. Yeah.
You do your stuff however you want to do it. So,
Cool.
I'll play music at 11:25 if you're still ready. So.
Play music? Okay, cool.
Talk off music.
And what time are we done in here?
So we're done here at noon.
Okay,
The hope is that like 11:25 is when I do it, so I can get to my
Sweet.
stuff.
Great.
We'll set them up for the exercise and hopefully
Cool.
give them 15, 20 minutes
Okay.
to do the
And
exercise.
all I'm doing to do this vision thing, the window, talk about SG a little more.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Great.
Yep. So kind of showing that example.
Yep, got it. Okay. All right. I know there's still some talking. What I'd love to hear is just from a few different tables, different translations. Call out what translation you read or what translation you have in front of you. And there's this quote that Jesus said in John 39. Get John 1:39. He said to them, what did he say? So in different translations, what did he say?
Come and see.
Come and see. What translation?
New living.
New Living.
Come and you will see.
Okay, what translation?
ESV.
ESV. What else?
Come and you will see, then
Come and you will see. NIV. Pretty straightforward. Come and see. Come and see. Here you have this army of people that are curious about what Jesus is doing. This is John 1, right? This is the beginning of his ministry. He's been around for 30 years. There's a lot that he has done, but also not a lot that he has done compared to what the next 3 years is going to look like. And these people asked Jesus this simple question, and he such a tactful answer. Such a tactful answer. It's a very simple question. Complex questions are great to answer, but he found this really smart way to answer a very simple question. Hey, where are you staying? Like if somebody asked me that question, I'd be like, oh, I'm staying at my buddy Rusty's house. Next question, who's Rusty? Oh, he's my best friend. How'd you meet him? It's like, dude, I'm staying at his house. What, you asked me where I'm staying at his house. Jesus, he said, come and see. Now, why did he do that? I want to hear from you guys. Why do you think he did that? I have my answer. I want to see, maybe you guys will have some crazy epiphany that I didn't know. Why do you think he said that? Come and see.
It's easier to show than tell.
It's easier to show than tell, okay?
It's practical and it's about intimacy. He's saying, come hang out with me.
Yeah, come hang out with me.
Discipleship.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, he's inviting them to join with him.
Inviting them to join with him?
God has kind of a track record of just saying, hey, trust me. You know, this.
Yeah, just trust me. Yeah. So Jesus had this thing where like he would walk places and just mobs of people would follow behind him. And what would happen sometimes in these mobs, people would get healed, right? People would experience his goodness. People would experience miracles. They would see this. So Jesus saw this simple question as an opportunity to help them further understand why he was here. You want to know where I'm staying? Oh, I'm staying down the street at the thing, by the stop sign that's broken that somebody ran into last week. Yeah, I'm staying down there. Okay, cool. Next question. No, Jesus said, ooh, come and see. Why? Because Jesus is like, dude, it doesn't matter where I'm staying, but I'll show you where I'm staying. And there's a whole bunch of stuff that's going to go down along the way, and it's going to change your life. Jesus found this really beautiful way of answering a really simple question. I think sometimes when people ask us questions about ministry, I think of this woman who I shared a story last year. She had said, Jamie, I want to know, I want to understand fully what you do. I did not at one point mention the word Discord. Rarely do that in fundraising meetings because what does Discord actually mean? Like chaos, right? You do what? You do what? Don't bother using the word Discord. Don't say Minecraft, because then they're going to be like, what's Minecraft? And then, well, it's this game where you have redstone. Dude, guys, don't mention redstone at a fundraising meeting. That's great. Understand who you're sitting across from, right? But Jesus knew it didn't matter who you were. That answer, just come and see. That applies to everyone. He had a way of talking that applied to the most amount of people as possible. Now, when the rich young ruler came to him, he very specifically said, go sell everything you have. Now, that doesn't apply to all of us. That applies to him one-on-one. But in this case, he answered a question in a way that applies to everyone. Typically, when I'm in a fundraising meeting or I'm explaining our mission, our vision to somebody, I try to explain it in the most broken down way possible. Our mission is we point students to Jesus Christ by building relationships through, and they're like, oh, this is good, video games. And they go like, they start to break. It's like I say video games. I could have said through knitting, and they'd be like, oh, that's so sweet. I could have said through football, they'd be like, ugh. I could say anything. I say through video games, they're like, how does that work? I'm like, I don't know, what's your favorite thing? You give me 10 ideas of how to use that for ministry, and I'll give you 1,000 for how you can use video games, right? So find the most simple way to break it down and mention video games. Your context as little as possible. Jesus didn't get specific here. Just come and see. Fundraising, I think a lot of times, let's just say, get the idea of fundraising out. Just talk vision for a moment. Now, a marketing expert would have so much more to say about this, but I like to explain vision casting It's like a window, and there are two sides to the window. And sometimes there's a one-sided mirror, and you can see through one side, you can't see through the other side. But think about it like this. If I was a painter, and my friend Steve was an interpreter of art, okay? But he's one of those interpreters of art, like, I don't like that abstract crap. I need to see some real good quality art, okay? Steve's ability to understand the vision, the painting, is actually not limited too much to my skill because he's an expert interpreter of art. If I do draw some abstract art, he's going to be able to like break that down and understand it because he's really good at understanding paintings. But let's take Cole back there. Cole's like, I don't know much good about art, okay? Like, I love you, Cole. But I need to make sure that whatever I paint is really clear for Cole because Cole he's an awesome guy. Interpreting paintings is just not his gifting, right? So what that means, if I'm painting a picture for Steve, I can be a little lazy about it because he just knows a lot about art. But if it's Cole, I'm like, Cole, this is a cow. And he's like, okay, but where's its jetpack? I'm like, Cole, cows don't have jetpacks. But I could draw a blob and Steve would be like, ooh, this cow just really stands out of the blah, 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 right? So my point is this, if I think that someone across the table from me is not understanding the vision, is it because they're not a visionary naturally, or is it because I'm just not really good at making my vision clear, right? So I think there are so many layers to vision. Some people, they need to be in the room and physically see it, and they go, I see it. This is it. Other people, they could see a video. Peel back another layer, some people can see a picture. Some people, they need a compelling story. Other people, I got this guy, Bob. He's my friend. This is his real name. I'm not making it up. His name's Bob. And I could just be like, Bob, I have an idea. He's like, what is it? I'm like, Bob, I want to get 12 computers that are super duper nice. And I want to set them up and have a physical location where it'll be like imagine if there was one soccer field in town. And all of the schools had soccer teams and they needed to play it. But let's say the church owned the soccer field. Wouldn't that be so cool? He's like, cool. That'd be so cool. It's like, I want to own the only esports arena in town. He's like, okay, how much do you need? 150K. Okay, here's 3. No, he didn't do that. But we raised the 150K a lot because of Bob's help. Bob didn't need to see a picture. He didn't need to see anything other than just me using some words because Bob's a visionary, right? Somebody else, I know this person. The way that we got them to give was I said, hey, we just built this arena. I want you to come and see it. They came, sit down, and they're like, oh my gosh, this is awesome. I see it. And I was like, I want this place to be full of kids that get terrible grades, that don't show up to church, that don't want anything to do with the gospel, and they have no money. And here's how I want to do it. I want to sponsor them for good behavior. Every time they volunteer somewhere, I want to match their hour up to 4 hours a month. And we created this system where if they do a leadership lesson, which is really a devotional, if they check all these boxes, they can get up to 17 free hours of gameplay every single month. And he's like, I get it. I'll fund the first 100 hours. You know, it's like, awesome, that's sweet. So to me, this guy, there's no way I could explain this to him. He needed to be in the room to smell the nerdy Smash Bros. Kids BO. You know what I mean? Like at that point, he's like, I get it, I see it, I want to make this happen. So what you really need to challenge yourself with is if you can't seem to find people that are understanding the vision, you have to be extremely humble and just acknowledge, maybe I'm not really good at casting vision. Maybe I'm not great at telling my story. Maybe it's not very compelling. Maybe my idea kind of sucks. Like that's hard. I've had to do that. I've had to do that. I'm not sharing these things because I don't know most of your ideas. I'm sharing this to say that I, at times, have had bad ideas and someone like Bob had to be like, Jamie, that idea sucks. I'm like, thanks, Bob. What do you want to talk about now? He's like, well, I don't know. So I just sit on his porch once a month and sip coffee till I have a good idea. And that's my relationship with Bob. And I ask Bob for money like once a year, maybe. And sometimes he beats me to the punch by writing a check. Because as I talk, as he comes with me and he sees it, he's just like, that needs to keep happening. I'm like, you're right, it does. He's like, how much does it cost? 30 grand. Like, okay, here you go. I'm not saying these numbers to inflate anything, to make it seem crazy, but I'm trying to paint a picture that he mentioned hundreds of millions of dollars, right? Like people throughout Reliant have raised tons of money, maybe 20 million, as we said, I don't know, a bunch of millions of dollars, okay? Like, to me, the reason we say this is not to create this like status of like, this is what it means to succeed. Like, oh, these numbers is when you've got it. No, it's just to say like, guys, it's possible. It's possible. I've heard people say like, oh, this group of people or this demographic, they aren't ready to give yet. I'm like, oh, bro, let me in the room. Let me in the room. Let Jon in the room. Let Jon in the room. Because sometimes if someone is not understanding the painting, it's because I haven't really practiced a whole lot with a paintbrush. Right? So today we're going to have opportunities for you guys to practice some role play. I freaking hate role play, but it's really, really helpful. So get into it, like engage, make sure that like when you do this, you really take it serious. Because for me, I can share from my own experience. Okay, Jon can share as somebody that helps a whole lot of people like us go and fundraise. Okay, I'm only here because I've done it. I'm not here because I would not say that I'm an expert in fundraising, but I would say that I've been there. I think in some spaces I could be considered that, but in this space, I'm just really passionate about it, and the Lord has allowed me to do it. The last thing that I'll say before we transition a little bit is just that I think it's really important to acknowledge this whole like two side of the mirror thing, right? Like who are you talking to and who are you? If it's a church, you've got to think differently. If it's a grandma, you've got to think differently. If it's a teenager, you've got to think differently, right? I think one of the most difficult things is getting your first donation. Getting your first donation. I shared my story of how I was able to, by the grace of God, to get going within 3 months of making asks. And there was one group that said, we'll give you X amount of dollars a month, and your first goal is to get that matched. And there were a whole lot of people that I was able to say, hey, we have $1,500 a month so far. My first goal is to get that matched. And they said, oh, wait, somebody's already in for $1,500 a month. That's crazy. I'm like, yeah, these dudes are nuts. They're like, okay, well, here's 100, here's 250, here's $20 a month. I can't do 1,500, but I can do $20 a month. I can do 1,000 one time, right? Whatever. But what I went in was I said, hey, I'm not asking you to give to something that does not already have momentum. I'm asking you to be a part of something that already has movement. People we can start with is our friends, our family, our grandparents. It can be families, family of students or people that are already part of your ministry. I love doing this exercise where you try to sell a pen. Okay, so you try to sell a pen. You'd be like, hey, this pen is super cool. You should buy it. Cool. I did this last year at a global thing in Egypt. There's about 300 leaders in the room. And I said, I want everybody at the table to pick up a pen and try to sell it to your neighbor. Then I asked, how many of you started with this? Hey, what is it you're looking for in a pen? One person out of 300 leaders raised their hand. Because most people are like, oh, look how cool this is. I don't care how cool it is. I'm a nerdy like pocket guy. I need to make sure it has a little clip. Look at that clip, bro. Ooh, oh, it didn't snap. Sorry, this is a bad pen. You don't want this one. But that pen, oh, that pen right there. Like, hey, I need something that I can fidget with. Yo, this lid that's too hard to pop off. But that pen, you can spin it, and every once in a while, it'll squeak a little bit when you do it. Like, ooh, right? So you need to understand what somebody wants in a pen. Same thing. We need to find missional alignment. Missional alignment. When you're talking to a grandma, you don't need to mention Minecraft. You don't need to mention Discord. You don't need to mention Xbox 360. You don't need to mention any of that. You just need to say like, hey, do you have any grandkids? Yep. What do they like to do? Play video games? Oh boy, have I got a story for you. Missional alignment. That's it. Missional alignment, that Venn diagram of like, where is there a little bit of overlap? And if there's 1% of overlap, you have the opportunity to capture their heart with that. And when I say capture the heart, I'm not saying in some manipulative way, but what I really am saying is that the body of Christ, it's a movement. We are moving in the same direction. And when you're moving in the same direction as other people, and you'd be like, hey, I know you're headed that way and I'm headed this way, but we both want that to happen, right? Yeah. Let me invite you into something. It's very, very cool. Missional alignment. That should direct and that should steer every single fundraising conversation you have. Yeah, have a template. Yes, have a case for support, which I mentioned earlier. We're going to talk, that's an organizational perspective, but we're going to talk about have your own story, have your own script, have your own like planned session ready. But man, have variations, have spin-off, like the Until Dawn, right? The butterfly effect, where like you make one decision, then this happens. Oh, you know what? They mentioned they have grandkids. Oh, I can't wait to tell them the story about Susie, who like her first time coming was like, oh my gosh, I need to show my grandma this game because she loves bugs, and it's Bug and Seek, made by Christians, right? So the point is, be ready to have ways that you can steer the conversation based on their mission alignment, and do your homework. Do your homework. If you don't know anything about the person sitting across from you, like that's probably the very few times that I get on social media, and I use my wife's social media because I don't use it. I'm like, hey babe, can you look up this person? I have a meeting with them tomorrow. Like, tell me something cool about them. That's not cheating. It'd be dumb not to. Like, hey, I saw you have grandkids. How old are they? Oh, they're blah, blah, blah. Hey, you're one kid. I saw you had a Minecraft shirt. Hey, I got you this little keychain. Give this to your grandkid. Oh my gosh, that's so cool, right? Just be smart. It's Jesus knew things about people. That he cheated. He didn't even have to look it up. He just knew it. He knew it. If Jesus knows what's going on in their hearts, and he can like say that, like, actually, you've had several husbands. Like, dang, bro, like you just bringing the heat. I'm just trying to tell a girl that her grandkid plays Minecraft. Just understand people, learn them, find that missional alignment, and they won't feel like you've cheated. They won't feel manipulated. They will genuinely feel valued. They will feel valued because you took the time to understand who they are before making an invitation.
That's great. I'm gonna take away with my notes that Jesus cheated. That's what I'm walking away with. That's great. Awesome. Thanks, Jamie. You guys, I love getting a chance to hear Jamie talk about what he does. And it's a gift. And if you need some more time, and there's crew, go ahead and raise your hand, please, Cole. Yeah. There's other crew. I know, Jamie, you're leaving today. Cole.
Yeah, Cole's here.
You're leaving today too, right?
I leave like in the morning.
Okay.
Yeah.
Jamie's around. Talk to him. Talk about satellite and all those things. It's really great. It's fun to hear. I will give one before we jump in. I'm going to talk about some framework. I'm going to give you a framework, and so you'll write down the basic pieces of a framework so you can start to fill out. But Jamie named Porch Sits with Bob. All those sorts of things, which is great. Bob's great. Some of you are like, I don't know any Bobs. I have no single Bobs in my life. One encouragement I would give is, one, you never know what God's going to provide. Two, the majority of, I kind of threw out this number of helping raise hundreds of millions of dollars for folks and doing those sorts of things. The majority of those were with Aunt Susie, your aunt, at $10 a month, $50 a month. But when you compound that over tens of thousands and tens of thousands and tens of thousands of donors, tens of thousands of people who are going like, yeah, I want to be a part of what God is doing, then those things start to stack up. And that was what my team was built of. So when I raised and was full-time support-based to live in a downtown area, it was not cheap. It was primarily Aunt Susie's and my buddy who was like, I think I can do $5 a month. That's like one more ramen a month. I can do that. Right? But then my buddy was a partner for years and years and years with me. And I would ask him sometimes for an increase, and he'd be like, nope, still in ministry, bro. I don't make a ton of money. And it's $5 a month, but it was partners like that to come on. But he was always one of the first people to text me when I posted something like, hey, this thing happened, this was cool. And he was like, yeah, man. I didn't give the caveat that I'm a crier. Get used to it, sorry.
I'm a crier.
Yeah, I'm also a crier. But it was just years and years of partnership to help do this thing. And I always knew he was praying for me and backing me up and being stoked on what I was doing because he was partnering with God. So that's part of what we're talking about too, right? Casting those things in those. So there's Bob's, and then there's Hunter's. I can say his name. Hunter's great. So there's the idea around sharing your vision, kind of that larger piece, what that looks like, how to think about it, the things that are happening. Let's talk about the structure. How do you have a conversation with somebody? How do you structure a conversation? How do you structure that one pager? How do you structure some of those sorts of things? And so one of the things that I always like to start with is to say, one, it's relationship and sharing your story. For those of you that would have been here a year and a half ago with me, that's the main thing that we focused on in our workshop together was sharing your story, right? How do you share, hey, here's the things God's done in my life, and here's what led me to this. Here's how we do this and what that looks like, and kind of anchoring that in, I call it Polaroid moments. Moments that you can describe and people can feel and what that looks like of your story and how that does. So that's just relationship. How do you share your relationship, have relationship? This is stuff we've talked about over and over again today already. The next, Jamie's language, it's problem. What's the problem? My language, it's the need. So you'll hear me use those interchangeably. So what's the problem? What's the need? Kind of how do you describe it clearly? The next, Jamie calls it solution. I call it answer to the need. So what is it that you're doing? How is this answered? Hint, it's always centered on Jesus. It's a good place to start, right? So what's the solution or the answer to that need? And lastly, invitation. The invitation to partner. This is one of the things that we can often do. You can go and you can have a meeting and it's really awesome. And you're like, yeah, and God's doing this thing and you'll never believe it. And actually, I came as a character in cosplay because they may not know your character. And here were the thing, but here's the conversation. And then they were like, oh, I didn't know Christians came to this kind of thing. And then the person on the edge of the seat like, yeah. And you're like, okay, cool, thanks, see you later, bye. It's like, you didn't invite them in. You didn't give them the invite. Or again, you might go like, hey, yeah, if you want to give, that would be really cool. You had all this passion to describe the character and how much time you spend on your costume, but you didn't invite them in clearly, right? So that's the structure. Again, relationship or share your story, problem or need, solution, answer to that need, and invitation. And today we're going to focus on the primary middle pieces of that. And if at any point you want some of the bits about invitation, here's how to do an invitation. Clear. Be clear. Hey, God's doing this thing. Would you be a part of this? Would you come and give financially? I'm raising, and I would love to do that. And I'm hoping that people would give roughly around $100 a month. Would you partner with me in this work? And then you sit in silence, and it will feel like the longest silence of your life. The only thing that you think is they must hate me. They have to hate me. That's the only answer. They've been smiling and laughing with you for an hour, but now they hate you. What they're thinking about is like, I probably need to talk about that. Or, yeah, you know what? I had too much coffee today, and I wonder what they just said to me. That's what they're thinking, right? So you do that, and they're going to give you the answer that almost everybody gives, which is, let me think about it. Let me pray about it. And you'll go, cool, awesome. Can I follow up with you in a few days? And they'll go, yeah, great. And then you're going to call them to follow up. And you're going to be feeling that cloudy with a chance of meatballs, like, oh my gosh, oh my gosh, oh my gosh. They're not going to answer because nobody answers the phone. And you're going to be like, they hate me. That's what's happening. And what's happening in their life is they just changed a diaper and had poop on their hands. They can't answer the phone. And then they saw your name and they were like, I can't believe I forgot to call him back again. That's what they're thinking, right? So invitation, be clear, share your story, do those things. Today we're going to talk about this middle piece, that casting the vision. Problem, again, problem, what is the need? Solution, what is the answer to that need? So the need or the problem. What is the need for this ministry? This ministry that you have, that God has placed in your heart. Something drove you here, right? Maybe you drove here physically. I didn't even think about driving here. Like maybe you drove here today because you're local or those things. Something drove you to be a part of this ministry, to drive. What is that need? What is the problem? What's going on? And the ability to share this in a way that is visual and compelling goes a long way to helping partner understand the thing that God is up to. So the need can be as varied as you and the things that you're doing and how expressing, but most needs, when you express it, they can have two primary pieces. Again, frameworks are helpful to help you begin thinking, right? Not like a rule. Like you don't have to follow this, but I'm going to give you two things that you can hold on to and begin to think about and how you shape that. So the two things that often go into a good need or a good problem: one, data; two, story. Stories. What that looks like. So data, stories, problem. So we're talking about the problem or the need, right? Data and story is a piece of that. Who here loves numbers? Okay. Yeah, sometimes you love it. Yeah. So one person raised their hand. The others were like, oh, sometimes. Yeah. So if you just start rattling off a bunch of percentages at somebody, they don't like that either, right? So data for the sake of just giving numbers and what that kind of looks like, right? But good data that is rooted in imagery, rooted in how we understand, helping someone understand what's happening, really helps somebody see the need and what's going on, what that looks like. And it's going to be very contextual to the work that you are doing, to the things that are happening, right? Good data that pertains to the need for your ministry and shared in a way that resonates with the person that you're sharing with really matters. Contextualizing it to their life. And so I want to give a few examples on what this looks like. When I raised to go and plant in Indianapolis, I pulled together a few statistics, and I'm going to tie this to Steve here in a minute because I think there's some things, but I pulled together a few statistics. And basically, I was like, here's this number of people who are in church and say they would never step foot into a church. Here's this statistic. Here's the statistic. I'm in Indianapolis, which is like, I talk about like the glint at the top of the Bible Belt almost a little bit, you know? It's like almost out of it, but like it's there. And I basically came up with a statistic that I was like, so I'm estimating that roughly 87% of Indianapolis knows what's happening in our buildings, and they don't want in. They get it. They just don't want to go. And then I tell a story, and I'll get to the story in a second, but like that's a statistic. I kind of pull it together and I'm like, hey, you know, this is the things. Then I come into the point and go, I'm moving to a city where 87% of the people know exactly what's going on. They think they do. They don't want to show up, right? So I think about, tying to local churches and what this is. Here's the statistic of, did you know that X% of youth spend at least 5 hours a week playing video games? That was probably too low of a number. It's got to be higher, right? It's like a huge amount of youth, you know. Here's the amount of youth that attend church on a weekly basis. Right. It's way down here. They're over here. My ministry, see, this is what we do at Save Point, is we meet them here to introduce them to Jesus and then tie them into another place. And to churches that are friendly for them and safe for them and doing that. Like you tie these kind of statistics together, right? I'm thinking about Giles. I was thinking about you specifically. He left, so he gone. I was thinking about the idea of, you know, like the average D&D session is 3 to 4 hours, right? It's going to take a long time. You're sitting there. You're being present. Can any of us listen to a pastor for 3 to 4 hours preach a sermon? I mean, if you're from the right Pentecostal tradition, maybe that's like, you know, you got that. Yeah, you gotta get out of here. You can do it. But you can go, hey, you know, can you imagine doing anything for 3 to 4 hours? But what about, there's this group of people that get together, they sit around a table, on average spend 3 to 4 hours exploring story together. And what I do is introduce them to the story of Jesus through telling a story together and what grace and redemption. Like these are some statistics too. The average amount of time, can you imagine sitting down with any of your neighbors for 4 hours and talking? I get to do this for 3 to 4 hours once a week and introduce people to Jesus and what that looks like. Or if you're Giles, I think at one point when I was talking to him, he's running like 6 games across the community and doing different things like that, right? So it's like he's adding his hours up and going and showing. So that's a way to see how we tied some of these statistics into the need, and you're painting a picture for somebody. You're painting a thing and what that looks like. And so, you know, just some quick ideas for in the nerd, like the amount of hours and resources that are spent in nerddom in the gaming industry is astronomical. Compare it to if you know this relationship, you know that, and like, hey, totally, you're in the whatever industry. Did you know that the gaming industry is literally 10 times bigger than that industry? Help relate it to them, what that looks like, how does this kind of play out? You know, there's some things that you can do there. So that's just some ideas, helping it to relate it to those sorts of things. A couple quick tips on that, so we're still on data. Less is more. Don't give them 50 data points. It's too much. They're not gonna get. Stick it to a few. Give it visuals. If you can have a story that data ties to, we'll talk about that. We're gonna talk about the story in a minute, but if you can find data that you go, here's some data, let me tell you a story that shows me that. I'll get to the story of Michelle here in a second. But pulling those things together and what that looks like is really helpful. So less is more, give it visuals. How do you tie it into what that looks like? Story. So again, we're talking about the need still, problem. Giving a story can be really, really helpful. When I raised support for lots of things. I've spent just under 10 years of my life fully support-based. And so I'm very familiar, I've done this, but when I was raising for this church plant, I was at the time managing a nonprofit coffee shop in the neighborhood that I was in. I was talking. And what I would do is I would end up telling the story of this regular named Michelle. And what I would be saying is like, hey, you know, I'd give the statistic. They get what's going on there. They're just not interested. Can I tell you a story? Had this regular come in, and she would come in, and I knew she's like really active, and she's always involved in nonprofits and doing lots of different things. And I was like, hey, do you know about the neighborhood meeting? We meet once a month as a neighborhood group, kind of talk about what's happening in the neighborhood and what that looks like. She goes, oh, is that the one that happens at that church down the street? And I got like immediately reading the tone. I was like, yeah, but like, nothing to do with the church, just meets in the cafeteria that smells like an old gross cafeteria, like it just is, you know, there. She's like, I just can't. Too many bad experiences. I can't step foot into a church. I was like, okay. And I was later able to be curious with her and do those sorts of things. But when I'm having the conversation, I'm tying to, here's this data, and then here's this person I'm interacting with every day in my neighborhood. She won't even go to a meeting that has nothing to do with the church just because it is on the church grounds. Right? Those are the stories I tell. So then what is the data and the stories that you can tell from your ministry that help pull those things together and to paint that picture, to show it and what it looks like? Story helps anchor that showing, come and see, so they can see the real life in it. Your story can be a great kingdom witness story. So somebody, I know that satellite gaming, I coach some folks that have raised through satellite gaming, and they had this story of a youth who came and was, Jamie could tell the story later better than I can, or Cole, but the idea of like, hey, came, all these sorts of things, and I was like, I'm kind of interested, but he just come and play games in a safe place with his friends. And then they were able to tell the story of, over time, them wanting to be baptized, and then the baptism and how that happened and what that looks like. So you can tell a kingdom redemptive story, what it looks like, or you can leave it open-ended like I did with Michelle. You can leave an open-ended story, tie this data point, here's the problem, here's the need. And so a few quick story tips.
Can I,
please.
so we could riff off each other.
Yeah,
So
please.
I think that's a good point too, is like leaving it open-ended, because that, it's like, well, wait, but what happened? That's where you come in. You get to help make this continue to happen. Like they don't always end with baptisms. That means there's still work to be done. I love that.
Yep, absolutely. All right, a few quick story tips. So we did data, a few quick tips. Story, a few quick tips. Y'all honor the people involved. So think about one good lens. If this story was about you, would you want somebody sharing it? It's a good kind of thing, right? How do we honor people, honor those stories, do those sorts of things? We've come through a lot of bad charity and raising and all that sort of stuff. So honor people's stories. How would it feel if it was you? And then good storytelling has anchors. It's better to give a few sharp details than to give every detail, right? Well, Michelle, when she came in, normally she had on a cashmere sweater, and then, she did that. She also worked at this organization over here. And no, I just gave you very quick her sigh. I just can't do it. Too many bad experiences. Give a few sharp details to a story is always better than giving the whole thing, what that looks like. So that is the problem or the need. Any real quick questions? We're going to have some Q&A in a minute, but any quick questions while we're there before I go to where you fall into next, the answer to the need?
You talk about honoring the people involved. Does that mean getting their permission to tell their story, or does it mean just telling it respectfully?
I think you could do either. You can do either. I think telling respectfully matters a lot. And so telling respectfully, anonymizing if you need to, what that looks like. But I think a lot of folks do, especially when it's stories of people who've come up through the ministry. Asking permission is always really helpful. So, yeah. Cool. Awesome. All right. So, solution or answer to the need. Again, that hint, start it with Jesus. It's just a good place to start. I don't know if you guys know this, but that's kind of the whole thing for us, right? Jesus. So what is the answer to need? The answer to this story, the answer to the story that you just gave, the answer for Michelle, the answer for the student, the answer for whoever's interacting in your ministry is the good news of Jesus. Is salvation, is who God is in Jesus and what this looks like. That is the answer and what it starts. And so it helps to start an anchor in the good news of Jesus. Hey, here's what this looks like. You and I both know. Now, that can look different for you, how you do that, what that looks like. It's a little open. Sometimes it can be a quick comment. Sometimes you can kind of go into it. But starting in the good news, the answer, you and I both know, hey, what they need Jesus. They need to know the real love of Jesus, not the things they've experienced or these and what that looks like. The next step is you want to go ahead and introduce and explain the ministry that you're doing, why it matters, right? Here's this need, and then how do I begin to address this? What does this look like? So you're going to go ahead, you created an open loop. How do we do it? What does that look like? Often you can start at the highest level that's actually compelling for the work that you're about to do. So start at the highest level. Here's an example of that, a mission statement. Maybe your org has a mission statement. Now, I need you to be real honest. Is your mission statement compelling? Reliant's mission statement? Not that compelling. I'm going to be really honest with you. It's kind of old. So I don't use a Reliance mission statement when I talk. But what I do, and it's directive. Sometimes mission statements are really directive, right? Like it helps us center on what is it that we do? It drives us. What does that look like? This is what we do. But Reliant, what we do, when I'm in a room with you guys, I'm like, hey, what Reliant does, we're here to help make more ministry happen. And we want to help that with you. How can I help you make more ministry happen, right? That's the highest level of what we do. How do we do that, what that looks like? I'm just giving that as an example. So then what is that highest level? Hey, here's an answer to this need. Oh, hey, all right, I'm going to put you on the spot, Steve. You ready? What do you do? What does SafePoint do? Highest level.
Highest level?
Highest level.
We help isolated people find community in nerd-friendly churches.
Yeah. So he just gave data and story, right? In this conversation, he'll just give him data and story. And then what is it that we do? Oh, we help them find safe space. We help them do these things, right? You give that, starts the highest level. So the answer to that, here's what it looks like. And so how do you do that? And sharing it in a compelling way that is simplistic and visual as you can do it. I love some of the adjectives you had and the adverbs in there, right? It was like really good what it looks like. And then what does that ministry look like? Now, for the sake of time, I could help you break it down, or we could do all sorts of things, and this is some of the things that you'll practice. But one of the things to think about is, how do you do that? What is the thing that your ministry will be doing? What's the thing that you will be doing? So at the highest level, what is it you're going to be doing? And then what is it that you're going to be doing? Here's the deal. They don't need to know everything. Yes, you're filing taxes. Yes, you're spending time praying for people. Yes, you're doing all sorts of other things. And there's even lots of initiatives, and you do all sorts of things, right? And I travel to nerd conferences and hang out with people there and learn more. You don't have time to tell them all those things. What are the 1, 2, or 3, if you're like, 3's pushing it, y'all. What are the 1, 2, or 3 things that you're going to be doing to help go, hey, this is what I want you to partner with, and what does that look like? 1 to 3 key activities. Some of that, this is a side note, I would say, some of those activities you adjust based on who you're talking to, right? Hey, so-and-so connected you with this person. Why? Because you know that they, it's a church with an empty room and some computers. They're willing to buy computers. Oh, the conversation you're having with them is very different in that direct ask, hey, we can come and do this thing, and what does it look like? Versus, whoever you may be talking to else. So sometimes that gets contextual, but what is the 1, 2, or 3 key activities that you're going to be doing? So you have the need, problem, solution. What is it this ministry is doing? What's happening? What are the 1 to 3 key activities? And again, all the same, I didn't repeat them here, but all the same pieces of telling, come and see, show it. If you have pictures of like, here's the 1 to 3 activities. Oh, here's the gaming center at play. Here's here's a picture of somebody we hosted a tournament with youth, and here's these things. Here's a picture. This is one of the things that we do is we hold local regional events for tournaments. Do that to play games and what it looks like. Ultimately, to be able to clearly share the need with somebody and how the gospel and your ministry help answer that need, help people feel envisioned and excited to join into the things that God is doing. So that's what you're going to kind of do there. There's a larger structure, and we can talk about some of that, what that looks like. But getting this middle section really sharp and really clear, not for the sake of like, let me pause for a second, because sometimes in this conversation, we can start to go like, okay, great, you built a really great presentation so that you get good investors, right? That's not what we're talking about. What we're talking about is also, but it's not at the same time, but being really confusing. Is that helpful for them to see what God is doing? Right? Sometimes you'll have this, you may have this, some of you may have had this. I won't ask you to raise your hands because I don't want you to tell them, but maybe you sat down to have a fundraising conversation and you talked for 40 minutes and you finished and they were like, so what are you doing? Right? And so being able to come and be really clear, to share a compelling, clear vision. And so I'm going to tell you what we're going to do to kind of kick off. Before I talk about kicking off the exercise, any other quick things?
No, it's good.
Okay, sweet. So here's the exercise that we're going to do, and I'll kind of talk about timeline and all that, and then open it up for some Q&A. But the idea is that you are going to build today a sort of 5-minute, I talk about in the stand-up world, a type 5, that kind of 5-minute quick elevator. Hey, how do you talk about the need or the problem? And the answer to that need is a solution and what it looks like. So if you were taking notes, I'll go ahead and give you the simplest kind of outline. Think about the need as maybe a good data point and a story that shows that need. How do you do that? A story that shows that need and a good data point within that are kind of doing it. If you don't have the data in front of you today, for the sake of it, you can just kind of practice a little bit. Don't go with made up data later. But for today, you can, kind of look, it's probably a lot. Let's just call it this. What it looks like. And so that's the need. And then I'll talk about how you can kind of introduce that in a second. And then the next is the answer to the need. It's always helpful to start with Jesus. You don't need to belabor the point, but always helpful to start with Jesus, the highest level that is compelling. And what is the 1 to 3 things that you are or you will be doing? You are doing or you will be doing. And then I would encourage you to think about maybe somebody that you want to have this conversation with soon, and think about them as your target. So think about, how did you say this to them, right? So again, we've thrown out some examples, but like grandma, or hey, normie pastor at your church. Maybe it is like, hey, I know there are a bunch of other gamers that I'd love to have this conversation with. Whoever that is for you, kind of picking that and going to them. And then when you practice later, you'll say, hey, here's who I'm talking to. So that person can kind of be in that mindset with you and what that looks like. So need, answer to the need, pick a persona. Let's take a few quick moments for any questions. And then Jamie and I are going to be here. We're just going to kind of float. And timeline-wise, here's where we're at. We are at, I see that hand. I just don't want you to feel ignored. I got you, man. I got you. So, our 30-minute break technically starts in like 15 minutes. And so the hope is, take some time between that 30-minute break and now to kind of begin to brainstorm that, write that out, what that looks like. We'll come back. We'll give you a little bit more time at that mark to do that. And then again, you're going to turn to your table and practice with somebody. Not with somebody you came with, ideally. Let somebody kind of do it. I'll give you a rubric for that. If part of you is like, hey, what? And I'm going to be like really clear on like, hey, here are some ground rules for giving feedback. Be kind, be curious, all these sorts of things. So it'll just be a very open, we're all figuring it out together and what that looks like, right? We'll do that, and then Jamie and I will be floating for that as you guys each get to share with one another, you and your partner. And then to finish, we'll bring 1 or 2 people up at the very end of our time to share with the whole room. And Jamie and I can give live feedback and go from there. So, does that sound good? We'll start with some questions.
Yeah, real quick.
Huh?
Break, kind of like, hey, chance to kind of sit through it, or is it like, oh, this is workshop time for that 30 minutes?
So my understanding, I don't know about y'all, but I'm in Eastern time zone, and I'm a hungry boy, so I'm gonna try to find some food during that break and like actually do it. My hope is we have enough time to, for those of you who may want like a really polished thing, you won't have enough time to be super polished, but I am hoping you have 20, 25 minutes in total time outside of that break time to work on your thing, just because we need breaks, y'all. It's long days, so that's the hope. So take that 30 minutes to be a break, or if you're, feeling real spry, practice it on somebody at lunch, so.
I guess my question is about like time and place. Are these all of these conversations in the context of inviting someone to like a one-on-one conversation? Because like I have, like at my church, people ask me all the time what I do, but like we're in a men's Bible study, and I don't think that's appropriate, but I'm not sure.
Yeah, totally. Any setting, have permission, be clear about what we're doing, like all those sorts of things. You can apply this framework anywhere. I'll give a quick aside. An ask to everybody. Part of you are like, oh, cool, I'll put together a quick video and share it on Facebook. An ask to everybody is an ask to nobody. It's not going to work. I do encourage having a setting, what that looks like, how do you invite into what that looks like. But for a video for Facebook to start a conversation, you could use the same framework.
Yeah.
So need, problem, solution, invitation. And you could apply it anywhere. You just change it based on the context. Cool. Awesome. Jamie and I are here. We'll kind of just like bop around a little bit, but also feel free to come and ask us a question. But go ahead and take the next 12 and a half minutes to do that. If you're somebody who's like super nervous and you just want to keep going during the 30-minute break, do it. I would encourage you, go outside. We're in beautiful Colorado, y'all. So go outside, take a little bit of break. Try to be back in here at that, what is that, 12:30 mark for a bit more time. And if you want to go ahead and, be outside for that work, just try to be in here maybe 12:40, 12:45, and that's when we'll really get ramped. So does that make sense?
Just in case anyone is curious, for lunch at like noon, if you ordered box lunch, they'll have them over where that coffee was as you came in this morning.
Yep.
So you can grab it over there.
Awesome. All right, I'm right here. So if you have questions, do it. Go ahead.